Well, by now, the audience was on opening night totally confused. The set was revolving. And we got to this point, and this is the moment where the actors came into the audience with their cat's eyes. And everything was revolving, and it was all becoming very disorientating. I wish I could have shown you this, but it was impossible to do, of course. Favorite moment of mine coming up now. I always wanted to actually be the person in the flies when this happened, to do this next big move. Never got to it though. One day maybe I will. This lyric, of course, is written by Richard Stilgoe, who filled in where T.S. Eliot obviously couldn't. Although it's hugely based on Jellicle songs, or Pollicle Dogs and Jellicle Cats. Richard, brilliantly, I think, and probably very few people could have done this. He adopted, I think, Eliot's tone of voice and helped us tell our story. Eliot never wrote Vivat and Cat. Probably it's one rhyme he didn't do. This is one performance taken one afternoon, 12 different cameras, and then reshot where there were some repair pieces that we felt we needed to do over the next 2 days. The whole thing was done in 3 days. And we're coming up, of course, to a moment that I know for many people is iconic, and I think is the moment that Gillian Lynne will always be remembered for, which is the White Cat solo dance. You see what I mean about the leg warmers? You see it cover the knees, and they make such a simple way of making a human, of keeping the fact that they're humans, but they're also cats, and it's just a simplest device. Originally, the Gumby was much longer than this. It was a great big sequence with the mice, but we, I think, rather wisely cut it. This was, of course, meant to be a version a bit like the Andrews Sisters. I think it was rather fun to sort of think of a kind of almost a wartime Second World War arrangement for this. Again, the costumes are so brilliantly witty, and the whole idea is they were things that the cats could have found in the rubbish dump where they were that night.
Thank you, my dears.
The Tugger, played by John Partridge. John Partridge. He was in Chorus Line. Now, you're not going to believe this. He went on to win a programme in Britain about cooking called Celebrity MasterChef in 2018. John Partridge. I do hope his winning dish wasn't partridge. One of the early previews, Paul Nicholas, who was playing the Tugger, came out into the audience. One night, he used to ruffle everybody's hair, and then he ruffled the hair of some guy and his toupee fell off, which was slightly unfortunate. Another night, he kind of ruffled the hair of some Arab oil magnate, and 2 security men who were sitting beside him came up and hustled him away. There's no doing anything. I suppose this probably shows that the team involved with the show were children of the rock and roll times. And maybe we were a little influenced by Elvis, you never know. But what about a little shout out for Little Richard? I mean, the guy who really, really influenced all of us, the original rocker and glam rocker. About it. The thing is, Cats is about joy. Oh, maybe not now. Must tell you a story about Barbra Streisand coming to the theatre when it was originally in London, because she was interested in recording Memory. And it was great fuss. She didn't want to come into the theatre, when the lights were up, because she thought she'd be recognised. And anyway, we had to explain to her that the theatre moved, that the auditorium was in motion. Anyway, we sneaked her in. And we organised these canopies for her at the interval. We said we got her out, and which Nick Allott, who was the theatre manager, organised. And we got drinks, we got champagne, absolutely everything. And she said, "No, I don't want any of this. I want milk." Now, I suppose you could say that in the Cats Theatre we should have had milk, but of course we didn't. I mean, all we had was that sort of long life stuff, in those little tiny little cartons, and those little tiny things. So poor old Nick Allott, as theatre manager, had to go out, and he found all these little tiny milk cartons and put them into a glass for her. At which point she decided that she wanted to leave because she said she was getting claustrophobia and didn't want to go back. Anyway, a couple of days later, she did record Memory, and of course it was a fantastic version. Now we have Bustopher Jones. Bustopher without interruption, as I wrote it. Do not be beguiled by other versions. Other versions with unfunny interpolations, which I begged to be cut out. I did manage to get the worst removed. This song is about wit, not coarse jokes. It's also about taking the song at the right speed.
And then I've lunched at the tomb on cabbage, rice pudding, and a mutton.
Now, Munger Jeremy and Rumpelteazer, I've had a question about that just passed to me, which I must answer. This is the version that was written for the Broadway production. Actually, very much at the requests of the producers there, the Schubert organization, the Schuberts, Bernie Jacobs and Jerry Schoenfeld, great, wonderful theatre people who sadly not with us anymore, but became great friends of mine. And I really wrote this for them. I like it. I don't know, sometimes I like this version, sometimes I like the other one, the original one we had in London. But this was very much done for Gillian, the choreography too. And I think this has got some of her best work. It also has a section in my beloved 7/8 time. Coming up now, you can all count it, can't you? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Argentine joint. Take eggs and greens, then the cook would appear from behind the scene. Insane a voice that is broken with sorrow. I'm afraid you must wait and have dinner tomorrow. The joint has gone from the oven like that.
It's worth saying that you can't give a vocal performance while you're dancing like this and doing this sort of work, or certainly not one that is worth having. And therefore, it's one of the reasons why a lot of this was pre-recorded. But the artists, they had 12 speakers on stage and they were able to keep really pretty perfect time, but using the technique that was new at the time. It was very, very, very new then. We were able to just move the frames of the pictures if ever there was anything slightly out of sync. coming up is the Peaks and the Pollicles, which we still do in the latest version that was done on Broadway. This is the moment where the cats all dress up as dogs, and it comes from Eliot's original idea that there would be both cats and dogs in his anthology. This was the moment that when we saw it in the final dress rehearsal, that Cameron Mackintosh and I decided that it possibly was the most dreadful thing we'd ever seen in our lives on a stage. And we thought to each other, what are we going to do? How are we going to cut this? What do we say to our director and choreographer other than please do something about it? So when it was on the first preview, when it was about to happen, this song, we went and hid in the bar and we poured ourselves an extremely large drink. And suddenly we heard these gales of laughter and applause. And we stood at the back of the theatre and thought, are we believing what we're seeing? The audience is loving this. And it just shows you, doesn't it, that, gosh, sometimes the old adage about a dress rehearsal not working is absolutely something you have to remember. It can be quite different when an audience is there.
And scraped their hind feet and started to until you could hear them all over the park.
I must tell you a story, though, that I hope John Napier won't mind me saying this, but you saw how in the Peaks and the Pollicles he used all of those cardboard boxes and everything and used them to such great effect. He designed for the ball these brilliant ball costumes. I mean, they were a celebration made out of old crackers and things that were lying around in the rubbish dump and everything. And they were just astounding costumes. I mean, really as good as you can get. There was a problem that, of course, you couldn't dance in them. And so, I mean, these costumes literally were like 5 or 10% of the budget. And for a show like ours, where we weren't even sure whether we could make it through, you know, and we didn't. We opened with our investment, half of it missing, apart from the bit and mortgage on my house and all that. And, you know, to lose like such a huge part of our budget and the costumes, which were wonderful, but just not possible to be, you know, danced in, was like a big blow. And anyway, I remember John, in fury, kicked the whole lot down the stairs to the back of the theatre. I never know what happened to them. A few of them became bits and pieces of the set, but they were fabulous. Our American friends, the Schuberts, were very keen to, I'm going to be honest about this, they were keen to have the show possibly re-choreographed for America. They asked Michael Bennett to come and have a look at it. And I remember that night well, because of course Michael Bennett, chorus line and everything, was an absolute legend. And Cameron Mackintosh and I were going to take him out to dinner afterwards and ask him what he thought. And I remember him saying, "You shouldn't change a single thing." He said, "There might be 1 or 2 little moves that I would have done differently, but I wouldn't even think of wanting to re-choreograph this. So I don't believe anybody else could have done it." And actually, we went home with him to my flat in London and my apartment in London, and he then managed to dance the entire musical by Irving Berlin called Mr. President. It was a very, very funny night, I have to say. Never laughed so much. I don't think I ever remember it. He moved all the furniture around and reenacted the whole of this musical. Anyway, he wrote a letter to to Bernie Jacobs, well, to Gillian Lynn. I'm sorry, he wrote it to Gillian Lynn saying, "Your work is absolutely extraordinary, and you know, I wouldn't change a thing, and you're to be congratulated and must bring this to Broadway as it is." And nobody in the Schuberts could really believe it. And even at one point they said that it can't really have come from him, which was absolutely ludicrous. But anyway, it was one of those things. I mean, it was all forgotten, but it was an extraordinary thing that Michael Bennett absolutely thought Gilly had done something really unique with this.